Dave, it's me, Dave. I know you want to shimmy in the sun with all your friends, but right now, seriously, don't. Hang out from home, where pants are optional. You can do it for America.
Episode of the English edition of the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast. The Lucha Central Weekly Podcast is part of the Lucha Central Podcast Network on luchacentral.com. We are very excited that you are joining us for this premiere episode. Every week, our team will be bringing to you all the latest news happening in the world of Lucha Libre. We'll be covering what's going on with the world's largest Lucha Libre promotions like AAA and CMLL, as well as the independent scene around Mexico. We'll also cover luchadors and those within ties to the Lucha Libre scene from WWE, AEW, Ring of Honor, Impact, and MLW. And last but certainly not least, the U.S. independent scene. Now, let's introduce the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast team. My name is Miranda Morales. I am a ring announcer on the independent scene in Arizona. I am a avid Lucha Libre fan, fairly novice, but you know what? I have a real enthusiasm for the Lucha Libre scene and the culture behind it. But luckily, I have two other co-hosts who, are showing me the ropes of Lucha Libre. I'm going to bring in Dusty Murphy to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Dusty Murphy. I'm from Lawrence, Kansas. I first became aware of Lucha Libre on a vacation in Mexico with my family in February 1995. There was a group of kids by our hotel that I saw every day, and one day one of them rode by with a mask, a Rey Mysterio mask on his hand. And he said, Rey Mysterio! And I had no idea what that meant. I'd never seen it. The phrase meant nothing to me. But then about a year later, in the middle of the night, on ECW, I saw Rey Mysterio, and it all made sense. And then kind of immediately after that, I started to see Ultimo Dragon, and Jushin Liger, and again, Rey Mysterio Psychosis on WCW. And I've been hooked ever since.
I love that story. This is definitely not the first time I've heard that story, but I love hearing it every time. And we are joined by the third member of our team, Brendan Barr.
Hi there. Can I just say I'm happy to be here and get it over with? No, I'm Brendan Barr. I've been a Lucha Libre fan like many people here for a very long time. If you ever had that friend that when you were watching old school WCW or ECW, that was the one that insisted on watching those crazy guys in masks, that was me. Right now I'm a member of the Seattle independent scene where I'm helping be a fan for our local Lucha Libre school.
And yes, we are a different but dynamic team here with you every week to talk to you about what's happening in Lucha Libre. This podcast will be available on luchacentral.com and all major podcast platforms. And again, we're excited to have you listen to our first episode. So we're going to jump into this week's news. But beforehand, it's going to be very hard for us to not mention this past Tuesday was Cinco de Mayo. very celebrated day throughout the world, of course, in Mexico, but also here in the United States. It also, as many memes pointed out, fell on a Taco Tuesday. So all of the stars aligned for this Cinco de Mayo. I wanted to ask both of you and start off today's show by asking, what did you do for Cinco de Mayo? Dusty, did you have any big things that you did to celebrate Cinco de Mayo?
We had a little party, nothing big. My grandmother came over. We grilled some chorizo out on the grill, and we grilled some corn and made like an elote relish to put on the sausages. It was really good. Had some margaritas. It was excellent.
Oh, you did it up. You really did it up this Cinco de Mayo, even in quarantine. I'm very, very impressed.
Thank you.
Brendan, what did you end up doing for Cinco de Mayo?
So normally I'm a big fan and go out to the show in the park. Our local school, Lucha Libre Volcanica, has a show out in the park. Obviously, I couldn't do that this year. So I watched some of their matches, and I watched the Lucha Vavavoom special that was on YouTube. And I managed to even find a street food vendor that was going to deliver to my house. So I had some Takis Locos while watching all of this stuff.
Ooh, that's a good way to do that. Yes. Brendan did tell me about the Lucha Vavavoom live stream, so I also watched parts of that. I made some carne asada, or attempted to make some carne asada at home. It turned out pretty good. So I did my own version of a carne asada taco. But we saw a lot of cool things on social media as well. Lots of luchadors on their social media posting videos and pictures. Was there anything that stood out to either one of you, whether it was just funny or something that just like was really poignant for you from social media in celebration of Cinco de Mayo?
Just in general, every year there's always a bigger presence from the luchadors online. This year I felt like they went above and beyond. I can't single anyone out right now, but the quote that I heard from so many people is, certainly this is a holiday that's more represented in America, but if you're celebrating my culture, please be welcome to it, was the general census, and they put up highlights from their favorite matches.
Nice. Yes. We're all. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I just saw a website that was celebrating 5 Rey Mysterio masks for Cinco de Mayo, and it was awesome. Just had 5 of his like superheroes, like the Captain America and the Batman and the Joker, and yeah, it's pretty awesome.
I dig it. Well, we hope that you as listeners had an enjoyable Cinco de Mayo. Hopefully next year we are all more out and about, and maybe some lucha shows will be happening. But, that's a segue into our first topic tonight. Brendan has some breaking news about Expo Lucha.
Yes, unfortunately, it came out recently, last couple of days, that Expo Lucha had to be postponed. They're concerned about the event and being able to put on the best show that's possible. They will be moving to June 12th and 13th next year in 2021, still in Philadelphia. We did reach out to Mass Republic, who is one of the people putting on the show, and Ruben with Mass Republic had a statement for us.
It was a very difficult decision that our team certainly did not take lightly. Unfortunately, with this pandemic, the COVID-19 virus going around, it just changed the way we all live around the world, from sports leagues being canceled or postponed, concerts being canceled. I live in Las Vegas, the Vegas Strip being shut down. Life is just not normal right now for any of us, for everybody out there. We were not guaranteed that we would still be able to run the event at the arena. The 2300 arena, the ECW arena, is currently closed. We were not given a guarantee that it would reopen in time for Expo Lucha. So what we did is we made the difficult decision of having to postpone this year's Expo Lucha. However, it is going to happen. It is going to happen at the 2300 arena. The new date is June 12th and 13th of next year, 2021. If you have tickets, you don't have to do anything. They automatically transfer over. If you qualified for the Lucha Bowl, which is sold out, or you're interested in going to the Conan one night only pre-show the night before June 11th, those tickets are still valid for that. You do not have to do anything. They transfer automatically. So we appreciate everybody's understanding. It was a very difficult decision. We do not cancel shows. I believe this is the first one we've ever canceled and or postponed. And we just hope everybody stays safe, stay healthy out there. And we appreciate everybody's support and understanding. And we look forward to seeing everybody at Expo Lucha next year. We are looking at adding more to the schedule, so 2021 should be a busy year for everybody at Expo Lucha and Mask Republic. So if you're out there, we are going to come to a city near you. So appreciate your support and understanding, and hope everybody's safe out there.
Those of you that are jonesing for a little more Expo Lucha, there is still events up on Lucha Central. So please tune in to Lucha Central. You can watch the entire event, the Future Legends event from Las Vegas, which has some great talent on it. That is, many of them are now are exploding into the indie scene.
And now we have some history. Actually, this week was also a momentous occasion for AAA as they were celebrating a big anniversary. Dusty has more on that.
Yes, we're actually going to be adding a segment each week, kind of relating to the segment on the website, luchacentral.com, this day in Lucha Libre history. And each week we'll kind of be taking our favorite historical moments, maybe matches, maybe somebody's birthday, and we just do a spotlight on a wrestler. But this week we're recording this on the actual 28th anniversary of AAA's founding. And for those of you that don't know, AAA was founded when Antonio Pena, who was CMLL's head booker at the time, and he had repeatedly tried to get like younger and more exciting, some of the high-flying talents booked higher and higher on the card. And there was just resistance everywhere. So he kind of got some of the younger generation that were unhappy together, and he left with Conan, Art Barr, Eddie Guerrero, Cien Caras, some big names. And then they also signed a lot of young guys out of Tijuana, like Rey Mysterio and Psychosis. And pretty quickly, they were able to put their competitor, UWA, the Universal Wrestling Association, out of business. And they signed most of the major talent when they folded, giving them the big stars, like Dos Caras and Los Bolanos. And Pena really amped up the production of his shows. He studied what at the time was WWF, and he tried to make his shows look as professional as possible. And that really set them apart. And those professional touches made them so exciting and new in Mexico that they were a big deal. And less than a year later, they drew 48,000 fans to the first ever Triple Mania, the biggest wrestling show that ever occurred in Mexico. And AAA later survived the deaths of Pena and his brother-in-law Joaquin Roldan. And today they're one of the obvious front runners, if not the obvious front runner in Lucha Libre, including just announced today, Dorian Roldan wants to build a performance center in Mexico so that luchadors from all over the world can come down there and have first-class facilities to do training and kind of get a feel for the lucha style in a way that they couldn't before, while having the top-notch first-class facilities. And speaking of AAA, it kind of ties us into our next segment, the tournaments. There are a lot of tournaments going on TV right now. Right now, there is the AAA Lucha Fighter Week 3 tournament, and it was awesome. It opened again. They do everything right. They started out, they showed everybody kind of cleaning the ropes, everything, starting out real. And then we had our first match. It was La Hydra defeated Big Mommy. There was a lot of crowd noise piped in the match. And online they had claimed ahead of time that this was like a live match or like a live show, but it was obviously pre-recorded. But a huge part of what works for Big Mommy is her like playing to the crowd and her kind of their reactions to that. Her charisma and playing to the crowd are such strengths for her that I thought maybe that's why they piped the noise in. It was definitely unusual. And Lahidra got the one, and it set up, I think, the strongest final for the women. And then there was some foreshadowing at the end, with Lady Shani coming out to, stop the beatdown on Big Mommy. And it led to our next match, which was Lady Shani. She defeated Lady Maravilla. Lady Maravilla came out with her mixed tag team title, so I think it's pretty much definitely setting up a match between her and Big Mommy for the mixed tags. And Shani really dominated in this match. There were some, like multiple submissions and that big kick to the head. All the announcers, in la cabeza! And everybody. I mean, it was a big kick. And then, like, after the match, there was that Maravilla had the attack, and Big Mommy ran out for the save and set up, what I think will obviously be a mixed tag match with her and Nino versus Maravilla and Villano 3. And our next match was Psycho Clown defeated Tejano Jr. I thought this was an amazing match, actually. I really enjoyed this. Tejano got in a lot more offense than I expected, and he really looked like a serious threat. He worked that arm over and over, and there were the cookie sheets that AAA fans have come to know and love. And I think Psycho Clown, who knows? He hit a Canadian Destroyer for the finish. It was awesome to watch. Very different from their Triple Mania match 5 or 6 years ago. But it's rare for me to see Psycho Clown selling so much, and after the finish even, and the medics came out. So I wondered if it was a legitimate injury or if they're trying to set up an injury storyline. It was hard to tell. Chessman defeated Pagano in the next match. And honestly, I was really surprised. I was super surprised to see Pagano lose the match, especially after that crazy, and it's honestly a little bit scary, that front flip dive off the second row that he did, and many more cookie sheets. And I felt like this match really set up Chessman to lose in the final, but I'm excited to see him regardless. He really looked great. The next match was my favorite match so far at the Lucha Fighter tournament. My man Pentagon Jr. defeated El Del Vikingo. It was an amazing match. Pentagon did like a devastating gorilla press style drop and threw like Vikingo face first onto the apron. Vikingo hit a springboard 450 off the second rope. They just both wrestled like they were determined to have the best match of the tournament. And Pentagon was vicious. He was like back to his Lucha Underground personality. He was working real badass. Everything they did had like an oh my god feel. And it was impossible to tell what was going to be a finish because there were so many amazing moments in this match. I mean, this was truly my favorite match of the entire tournament thus far. And then in the final match of the night, L.A. Park defeated Dr. Wagner Jr. It was a pretty straightforward match, and it might have been the shortest match I've ever seen between these two. It was pretty surprising to see Dr. Wagner lose before the final, but I don't think L.A. Park flew all the way down there in a pandemic to lose. And so this was a perfect revisit of some of their earlier matches, and it had some classic lucha brawling in a way that I really loved. The finish was amazing. Dusty Rhodes would have loved it. Wagner heeled the ref into the corner over a 2 count and kept throwing his hands up and clapping his hands through. And just as L.A. Park went for the spear, he pushed him into it and caught him. And it was an amazing match. But so short. I don't know if people are going to study it in the future compared to some of their other matches, but it was really fun and a great end to the episode, and sets up that amazing final going forward.
So what is the finals that we've got moving forward?
Sorry, I had it right here.
Okay. Well, those results are also available on Lucha Central.
Yeah, those results are available on Lucha Central going forward. It'll be the final. I think it's supposed to be a 4-way, and it'll be Chessman versus Psycho Clown versus Pentagon versus LA Park. And so that should be a pretty exciting and unusual match. And you can actually catch that live through LuchaCentral.com. We have a streaming video link on the site for that when it runs live on Saturday.
Excellent.
All of the previous episodes, too, are on LuchaCentral.com.
All of them are up there, so you can see the other performances going on. I've been saying this whole time that Pentagon Jr. is just blowing me away. He is looking like the Lucha Rudo of old that I fell in love with, and this match this 100%. Week did not change my mind.
Yeah,
I mean,
I actually really loved Hijo de Vikingo in this. I just thought that his approach at the beginning to just do aerial attack after aerial attack to try and wrap this up quickly, in some ways was the smartest strategy, because he knew the longer this match was going to go, the more punishment Pentagon was going to put on him.
Absolutely. Yeah, I loved that. It was a very smart start, and it almost worked for him.
Yeah, he really,
This match was the MVP of not only this episode, but so far, absolutely the entire tournament.
100%. Yeah, it's the best, in my opinion, the best match so far of the tournament. It was amazing. And both people, both Pentagon and Vikingo, they looked like stars. Big-time main event stars. So it's exciting to see where they're both going to go going forward from this. I'd love to see another match between them with some more time, where they could really work in a lot of the Pentagon psychology, and I thought this was a great match.
It's a great card. This was definitely, each card has gotten successfully more and more high energy and ramping up. I cannot wait for the next match, or the next series of matches.
Mm-hmm. And Dusty, to bring up some good points about some differences between this episode and some previous episodes, like the background noise that was chimed in, that wasn't done in previous episodes, and so it's kind of an interesting decision to make kind of in the middle of this tournament, when you kind of wonder why they may have not done it earlier on. And exactly what I agree with what Dusty said earlier about, with the first match being Lady Hydra and Big Mommy, that they probably did it because they played to the crowd, and I also noticed that, or wanted to play to a crowd, not that there was one there, but I just saw a lot more throughout this episode that the luchadors were playing more to a non-existent crowd. But it does, because there is a online presence or a crowd watching at home, I do think there was elements of that were fairly smart, because you're playing to now an internet crowd instead of a live crowd.
Yeah, maybe those noises were there to help the wrestlers be able to put that energy out and work towards that crowd. I did notice that they were focusing more on the cameras when they were working towards the crowd this time as well. So
definitely. Yeah. And the only other time they used the crowd noise besides the first match was when they came out in their intros. And so they were kind of really playing to a non-existent crowd there in the intros, and it worked for me.
Yeah, and there was a bigger push by the commentary this time on the social media aspect of it, with even a lot during, I believe the which it was the Chessman versus Pagano match, where they were focusing less on the match and more on social media, which I don't remember hearing in previous episodes too. So I don't know if there was just this internal push to recognize more of the fans who were chatting online, or providing feedback online. That was an element that I didn't see. But one thing that they had really pushed about this tournament and what was going to make it unique and special was, the interaction with fans.
So far, they've had the best empty arena matches, in my opinion. I mean, they really do connect well, from my perspective.
There's always a bit of a learning curve with something like an empty arena match, especially when it's not something that you 3 months ago were thinking you were going to be doing. So playing around with crowd noise is definitely not a bad thing to do, and always pushing social media, even during the best of times, is a good idea. So I was all in with this. Thought it was all good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think they're doing the best with what they have, but absolutely the wrestling overall was really good. I was excited about the Dr. Wagner Jr. versus LA Park after the first 2 weeks. Dr. Wagner was set up as kind of the main, the big legend for week 1, and same thing with LA Park for week 2. So for them to kind of come together for week 3, I think it was so hard though to top that previous match. So you had 2 legends, had a big main event feel, but I was kind of exhausted after watching Hijo de Vikingo and Pentagon Jr. That I was just like, okay, I get why they're going kind of more match style, more traditional. And
it was refreshing.
The commentators kept, it was. But I kind of wish a little bit more to set up, these 2 big legends to get into the ring. And I felt a little underwhelmed, but I think it was just more that they had built up their presence so much during the first 2 episodes. But also, I mean, this will not be the last time. And this does set LA Park up as, the legend going into the finals.
But it also, the finish on this felt like they were definitely trying to set up a rematch with these 2 legends in the very near future.
Yeah.
So,
I wondered if they were kind of aiming for Triple Mania with that. Like maybe a retirement match or something. I don't know.
Oh.
Ah.
AAA brought the first retirement match to Mexico, really, with Conan.
You never know. That's a good theory behind it,
Absolutely.
Not very many people expect Dr. Wagner to come back for this tournament or even at all. I think there was a lot of speculation about where he would go. And so this could be a good way to start a retirement. Not to say he would be the one, but just saying that the way that he was reintroduced, it really pushes element of, the legend is home. He's going to take it all. Like, there's no one else that could beat him. And maybe on the younger side, no, but I mean, this with LA Park has a lot of potential to go for another match or multiple matches.
I'm there for all of them. I remember watching many a match while I was on the bus and having people leaning over my shoulder asking me if I was watching lucha events and then not leaving while I'm riding on a bus from Seattle to Portland to see a wrestling event.
That's awesome.
And that one of Wagner's Apuestas matches was the main event that time. I don't remember off the top of my head which one it was.
A fantastic week with AAA again. This episode 3, plus previous episodes, all are available on luchacentral.com, as well as reviews in both English and Spanish on luchacentral.com. So if you want to get updated on everything that's happening with the Lucha Fighter Tournament, well, luchacentral.com is your place to go.
All right. Speaking of tournaments and other events of that nature, MLW has been having a head-to-head also with AAA. Now, these events were filmed earlier, and there are several weeks' worth of events that are on MLW's YouTube channel. But the most recent episode came up, and it is attempting to have a head-to-head competition between MLW and AAA called the Super Series. And we are nearing the end of the Super Series. Going into this, AAA or MLW was a little bit ahead on the series, and I'm going to spoil a little bit. AAA is trying to make a comeback by the end of it. We started off with a AAA exhibition match, however, on the show, which featured Poder del Norte versus Black Destiny, Fantastique, and Rayo Star, and Viva Van was with them as well. This was a nice trios match. Poder del Norte did get the win with some of their usual tactics, but that did not take away from it at all for me. And then the other match they featured was MLW versus AAA for the series, but it also was for the AAA trios titles. And it featured Jinetes del Aire, Vikingo, Octagon Jr., Mystices Jr. Versus Injustice, Myron Reed, Koto Brazil, and Jordan Oliver. Injustice, if you don't know, they are some of MLW's biggest teams, and they certainly knew how to bring out the booze in this crowd, starting with throwing tortillas.
Yeah.
And it just went it just went back and forth from there. The AAA team was able to win. It was spectacular, as you would expect from a young, exciting team like that. But I felt like it was a little bit impacted by them putting some MLW story in there with having multiple run-ins from Brian Pillman Jr.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was definitely interesting to see how that impacted the end of the match. And there was one point in particular, and you may be bringing this up, so I apologize if I'm jumping ahead, but I don't know, that 3 count by the ref at the end was a little fast.
I have been very well documented as being paying attention to the referee story on this. They've every week they've had issues with the AAA refs, and I find myself very distracted watching the refs at times. And yes, absolutely, there also was very clearly times where the referee was not allowing the MLW team to make tags or do other things, which, again, I'm supporting in this case because they were the bad guys, and I wanted to see the Injustice team certainly struggle in this match, but it's very interesting to me. And MLW does have an official complaint that they put up on their site about the officiating that AAA has presented.
That's awesome.
It's definitely apparent through the differences between the first match and the second match. For me, it was the lack of tags, or the emphasis on tags. The first match, I don't remember seeing like any tags. Like it made it entertaining. And I understand that's a little bit of the lucha style is, rapid in and out of the ring. But then in the second match, especially towards the end, that's when the refs started to care about tags and who was legal and who wasn't. So it was a little interesting to see that. But you're absolutely right as far as on the heel scale with Injustice. You know, you don't want them to win. And the commentary had a really good point about the nuances with the referees, and that it was going to fuel Injustice more to have all of these issues with the referees and make them feel more justified in their tactics. So I do like how they ended up intertwining that into the heel side of Injustice. But like I said, that 3 count specifically stood out. That was pretty fast because there was 3 counts throughout that match that were slower.
In general, as in my observation of lucha refs, the 3 count cadence is a bit slower than what we see in America. So that was very fast for what I see out of most Mexican refs. I'm not going to assume that there was any sort of agenda there, but it certainly looks like it was possible. So at the end of this, the Super Series has MLW up by 1. They will be having a match next week with LA Park's La Family Real versus the team of Psycho Clown, Nino Hamburguesa, and Psicosis. And that, if they win that, if AAA wins that, it will tie up the series. Otherwise, MLW will wind up ahead. I'm very much looking forward to that. And there are some other matches that I have found on the internet that may appear on that broadcast, and I'm also excited to see.
Another solid week of MLW programming, and a special shout out to Viva Van with that barrel roll splash during that first six-man tag. I love Viva Van. I've announced for her before. I know she's wrestled all over, and she's just a fantastic wrestler, and I'm so glad that she was there to be in front of that crowd, and she's just super talented, and to get in that barrel roll splash, good for her. Super proud and happy for her to, try and even the odds a little bit from Puerto del Norte. They're using tricky tactics. Well, when you have Viva Van in your back pocket, you're going to even the odds.
She did with that. That was a spectacular move, and I'm also very excited to have seen that because I've seen her live several times as well, and this felt like a big sort of step up where she's now on a big part of the scale here, where she's part of a big show and was a big part of the match, even though she wasn't officially a competitor.
Yeah, and my final thought this week, just between the two shows, is it's a good week to be Hijo de Vikingo. He has 2 really high-profile matches that he just did amazing. That mid-air drop kick from the top rope was it was insane.
So fluid and like a symphony. Yeah. It was just amazing.
He is going to be a big breakout star anytime now.
Well, in other tournament news, NXT has had their own tournament. It is the Cruiserweight tournament to determine the interim NXT Cruiserweight champion. NXT WWE has set up an 8-wrestler tournament to crown an interim champion, while Jordan Devlin is unable to defend his title. He is in Ireland, and due to travel restrictions to COVID-19, he is not able to come to the United States to defend the NXT Cruiserweight Championship. So, in the meantime, WWE has decided they're going to do a tournament to crown a new, or at least an interim champion. And the interesting part about this is a round-robin style tournament, which we don't really have in WWE. If I don't even know in recent memory of a round-robin style tournament in WWE. Dusty, Brendan, do you remember of any? Am I going crazy?
I honestly don't.
You would think you'd see it more because it's very popular formatting for the Olympics and the World Cup, but no, I can't think of any product recently that has done a tournament with this kind of formatting.
Yes, but if any of them were going to do it, I'm glad it's the Cruiserweight Championship. I feel like it is such a competitive field within WWE, and specifically now that it's being homed in NXT. NXT does have more of that air of not so much the sports entertainment element of wrestling, but more professional wrestling. So it does make sense that they made this format. As far as the format goes, 8 superstars, 8 wrestlers were split into 2 groups of 4. Within each group, there was the competitors face each other over the past few weeks, and the wrestler with the best record in each group would advance to the championship match. Any ties would be broken by head-to-head record, and essentially the winner of Group A is going to face the winner of Group B to determine the interim NXT Cruiserweight champion. In Group A, you have Kushida, Jake Atlas, Drake Maverick, and Tony Nese. And in Group B, you have Akira Tozawa, Isaiah Swerve Scott, Hijo del Fantasma, and Gentleman Jack Gallagher. This is big for Hijo del Fantasma because this is his debut in NXT was through this tournament. So this was exciting to see. And Isaiah Swerve Scott, formerly from Lucha Underground, so he has some Lucha experience as well.
Actually, the match we had between the two of them was a Lucha Underground match where you had Killshot versus King Cuerno, and it lived up to that level of magic. It was, obviously a WWE version of that match, but you could see the same level of absolute performance and concentration and athleticism from both of them in their what are they their bracket match, I guess. I'm not sure what
their group.
I guess a group.
Yeah. And I think they're both 1-1 now. Both Swerve Scott and Fantasma.
Yes. So the standings right now, Kushida has taken control of Group A. He's currently 2-0. You have Jake Atlas at 1-1, Drake Maverick at 1-1, and Tony Nese at 0-2. In Group B, Akira Tozawa is the leader with a 2-0 record. Both Isaiah Swerve Scott and Hijo del Fantasma are 1-1, and Jack Gallagher is 0-2. So you do have some front runners with Tozawa and Kushida, but there's still several matches that are going to be happening over the next few weeks. You have Kushida and Maverick scheduled for the future. If Kushida advances to the finals, he'll advance to the finals with a win. Same thing with Tozawa and Hijo del Fantasma. If Tozawa wins, he automatically goes to the finals. I really foresee that Tozawa Fantasma match to be also really entertaining. And I just think it's just a really good introduction for him. And like you both mentioned too, Isaiah Swerve Scott and Hijo del Fantasma, this was a match already, done through Lucha Underground, but done in a WWE lens. So it's getting to a broader audience, a wider audience. And hopefully it not only gets fans interested in what's in the future, but also possibly seeing what that previous match looked like.
Absolutely.
At Lucha Underground. Because there's definitely some differences. It's just a different scenario, a different environment between those two matches. So, it's great to see this on such a big platform as NXT. And I do think, if anything, to bring some more seriousness, not the term, because I don't think the Cruiserweight division has been not serious, but I do think that since the original Cruiserweight tournament, that title's been in flux. and anywhere from seeing, the first title holder of TJP to, the reign of Enzo Amore to, everyone who's had it since then, it's, it's had its ups and downs. And I do think Jordan Devlin is a fantastic current champion, but I do think it's an interesting approach that WWE is now doing more of an MMA style tournament or solution to the Cruiserweight title and having an interim, because we would never see this with the Universal or the World Championship. I don't even think we'd see this with any other title other than the Cruiserweight.
I don't know either.
In your guys' thoughts about what this could mean for the future of the Cruiserweight division.
As you're very rightly pointing out, they are putting a very front-forward emphasis on competition and long competitive matches, as opposed to what we used to get a lot of the time was kind of quick, high-energy matches. You have more chances to talk about matchup of styles, which is a thing that I used to love the Cruiserweight division for, because Tony Nese and Jack Gallagher are very different wrestlers than Drew Gulak, who is a competitor there, and Swerve and Io de Fantasma are also very different athletes. So you can have a lot of different matches and a lot of different exciting things come out of this by using this tournament format. Which will set up hopefully a whole bunch more things. And then in the case of Phantasma, you even have the backdrop of this other story that's going on. These guys in masks keep coming out after his matches.
Yeah, kidnap him. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that also that maybe that we'll see in 205 Live, not necessarily a rebranding, but a more legitimate sporting feel. Since they're kind of giving the Cruiserweight title a more legitimate sporting feel, I'm hoping that we kind of get to see some more of that in 205 Live and really develop some of the talents there, because those guys are kind of undervalued, I guess. A lot of people don't watch 205 Live, but it's pretty awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing what this means for 205 Live, too, this high-profile matchup on NXT.
So in talking with people previously about 205 and why they weren't tuning in as much, is they didn't feel the stakes mattered. And this tournament changes that entirely, where there's big stakes again. Miranda was referencing the original tournament. That was when people really were excited by it. So having another tournament, but in a very different format, creates a level of excitement that really brings this title to the forefront again.
It does.
And for someone like Hijo de Fantasma, who has debuted in this tournament, it gives me high hopes for more luchadors who are coming into NXT. Or coming into WWE in general, because this is such a good format for them as far as not only this tournament but this division. That's just, for the most part, most of them are within this cruiserweight division, and that's also just when you look at the history of cruiserweights. That's really Lucha Libre and Luchadores were at the foundation of it, and that's what, as fans, I think most of us really love and recall, and we're excited when the WWE brought back this title and adopted it. But also we haven't seen the best track record of WWE in incorporating luchadors. I think it's been a lot better over the past few years with Andrade and with kind of the new faction that they're building under Selena Vega. But really, that's just a drop in the bucket to many, many years of some frustrating ways of utilization of luchadors. So
Lucha House Party.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I'm a huge Lince Dorado fan. So Lucha House Party is like, I'm excited to see him, but
I was won over by Grand Metalik in the tournament. I went and watched more of his CMLL matches watching him, and he had an amazing match with a strong style wrestler, and it was the most amazing thing to see the two of them switching between lucha and strong style constantly back and forth in the match. And that became one of my favorite matches, and I feel bad now that I'm not remembering it, but for that year I went back and watched that match 10, 15 times.
Awesome.
Yeah, and you're right about the original tournament. That's really where a lot of these, current luchadors made their first presence, and it was powerful to the point where they were, brought on to the roster full time. But what happened when they were on Raw or SmackDown, that's a whole other story.
Yeah, it's a very, in some ways, sad story, but at the same time, they're getting to have an experience that very few wrestlers that perform have a chance to do.
It's true, and they do get a lot of face time on TV despite their position. I mean, they do. And that's kind of important post WWE. No matter what they do, that their faces are visible, and so it kind of, even if they're getting squashed a little, it helps elevate their visibility. I mean, there are people that had never heard of Lince Dorado before the Cruiserweight tournament, before he moved up and got called up to the main roster. Heard of him now, and someday might go see a local show because they recognize the name. And so that's also a big benefit, I think, for some of these guys, even if their booking isn't necessarily a benefit to them.
And I just real quick wanted to throw this in. While we're talking about performers in the WWE that have come in from lucha and are doing things, I really want to mention Raquel Gonzalez right now, because she is about to be a big part of several stories, and she's a second-generation Lucha Libre performer, and I have been waiting for 2 years to see her do something on this big stage, and very excited to see this happen.
Yes, I think her comeback, she just looks like a powerhouse. I think that, her now alignment with Dakota Kai, and just you can tell physically, she has just really taken her training to another level. She is much more menacing than before, and
and her size,
the women's tournament, she had a great performance, and she's strong. There's been a lot of cool videos and segments from WWE about showcasing her strength. Incredibly strong. But I also think now, there was just some changes with her training. I think that's just you can tell some differences within her, all very positive. And I'm really excited and thrilled that she's now being seen as a menace to the NXT Women's Division. I see a really good future. I could see her going toe-to-toe with a Rhea Ripley, kind of filling in those shoes once Rhea goes to a Raw or SmackDown. She could really be that, whether it's a heel or maybe that strong face. But I totally agree. Very excited about what we're going to see from Raquel Gonzalez. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to this and you haven't visited LuchaCentral.com, well, it's time to do it. LuchaCentral.com is the online home for Lucha Libre, where you can get all of the top news in English and in Espanol. And you can find the best curated video content and original content not seen anywhere else. You can find when Lucha Libre events would be happening in your area. You can also find photo galleries from top photographers covering Lucha Libre around the world, and a place to have their voices heard, from weekly polls to annual awards. Seen and read by top executives in all of the major Lucha Libre promotions across the globe. And on top of that, it's all free. So visit LuchaCentral.com, your centralized place for all things Lucha Libre.
So we have another news story that it's a little close to home for me. We had a legend in the sport, Supreme Lester Perforce. I've never had to say his last name before. I believe that's how it's pronounced. He passed away earlier this week at the age of 49. Some people might be wondering how that relates to Lucha Libre, but he and Chaos, also known as Joey Munoz of the Santino Brothers School, were tag team champions for the NGX promotion. They won the championship and technically never lost it. And then other things have happened. He was a legend in Mexico. We reached out to Kevin with the Masked Republic, Kevin Kleinrock, and he had a story, which is the kind of thing that I like to do to memorialize someone as a happy, fun story, as opposed to talking about the unfortunate circumstances. So let's see if we can get that to work now.
Yeah, yesterday was a tough one. It's been a few years since I interacted with Supreme on a daily basis, but there was a heck of a run there from just probably late 1998 through the mid-2000s, where we were working together weekly, sometimes daily, with XPW. And then, of course, even though he was not officially a founder of Santino Brothers, he was certainly part of guest training there over the years, and a number of other students who are names in wrestling today, indie scene names, California names, definitely came up through him. But for me, the one of my biggest memories was after XPW, years after XPW. Supreme and Homeless Jimmy had really gained quite a reputation for being hardcore wrestlers that didn't just have a reputation in the United States, but they got bookings in Japan. They became the FMW Tag Team Champions. Supreme and Chaos were popular down in Mexico and were getting bookings in Mexico. And I don't remember if this was before or after they became the NGX Tag Team Champions down there. I think they physically still have the belts. I don't think they were ever actually beat for those titles. But we, Masked Republic, Ruben and myself, we took Supreme down to the Lucha Libre La Experiencia, which was the Mexico City-based Lucha Expo, which really was one of the big inspirations for the Expo Lucha brand that we have now. It was just great. All the companies would come together under one roof, from AAA and CMLL to all the indies, and they'd run shows over the course of a few days, and there were vendors, and all the wrestlers had booths, and it was an experience really unlike any other. And the Perros del Mal group, which was Hijo del Perro Aguayo's group that Damien 666 was the booker for much of the run, they loved having Supreme come down and wrestle for them. And so I think that year at the Expo, it was Supreme and Shelly Martinez and a couple others that we brought down for the Expo. And I just remember I had been to shows in Tijuana, and lots of shows in Tijuana, but I don't remember if it was my first trip to Mexico City and really getting into the lucha world. But when Supreme walked into that building, that huge convention center, it was like a rock star from the United States had walked in the door. I was absolutely blown away by not just the public response to him, but wrestlers' response to him. I mean, he truly was a bigger star in Mexico than he ever was in the United States. And it was during that weekend that I really got my first taste of XPW as a brand. was so much more respected, and there was so much more love for that brand, even years after its death, in Mexico than I think that you would say in the mainstream of pro wrestling fandom in the United States. There was always, pockets and very niche fan bases for XPW, and XPW at one point, was selling thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of DVDs a month, and it was on television throughout the U.S. But even then, I don't think that your average pro wrestling fan either knew or cared about XPW that much. But man, in Mexico, if you were a wrestling fan, apparently you knew XPW, and if you were a hardcore wrestling fan at all, you knew Supreme. And so, we're looking back kind of fondly on life taken too soon. I'm really, really sad that I'm never going to get to work with him again. We had not worked together because we haven't been really producing your traditional, regular running shows, but I certainly always had a place for him in my heart, and knew that with some of the ideas I had in my head for the future that I hoped that we would have worked together again, whether it was with him on camera or behind the scenes. And so, this is a tough one. My heart goes out to him and his family, and to Joey Chaos, his nephew, and all the extended Santino Brothers family.
Joey Munoz on Twitter is Joey Chaos. He has set up a GoFundMe for Supreme's family. If you care to support, I'm certain that they would be happy to know that that Supreme has touched your life as well.
Yes, that's absolutely, and to all of those who are mourning him, those who are close to him, those who are impacted by his passing. That's one of the beautiful things about the pro wrestling lucha libre community, is how people can unite during times like this.
Absolutely. The lucha libre and the wrestling community is one of the reasons that I have become such a big fan of wrestling and lucha libre in particular, is the support of the fans, the general sense of community you get whenever you're in a room with somebody who knows that you're a fan, and the welcoming energy, as well as the almost shirt off your back mentality that I have seen from so many of the people that are involved, from the referees to the performers to the bookers. I've seen so many people that would absolutely do anything to support a fan or a performer, or it doesn't matter. As long as you love lucha libre, they will do whatever they can to make you feel comfortable and welcome.
Absolutely. Do you mind sharing that Twitter page again, so in case anyone's interested in donating to the GoFundMe, where they can find the link to that?
It's Joey Munoz. He's at Joey Chaos Munoz on Twitter. He's put up the link for the GoFundMe on Twitter, and then they will have the site up on Lucha Central as well.
And that's Chaos, K-A-O-S.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Well, we are going to be heading into the last portion of our show, but before we do that, a quick commercial.
Why should you visit thechairshot.com? Thechairshot.com is your home for hard-hitting reviews, news, opinion, and analysis with attitude. Why? Because you're smarter than the average fan. Thechairshot.com. Always use your head.
A big shout out to one of our partners, thechairshot.com, and our final news story of this week is actually something that happened a few weeks ago. It was reported on several news outlets, but also on LuchaCentral.com, that Cain Velasquez was released by WWE. This release happened about a week after the big wave of releases occurred. WWE let go of many performers, referees, those in backstage roles, those in office roles, mainly due to kind of the response to COVID-19, furloughing many people. So not necessarily a full firing, but a furlough, laying people off. And then about a week later, the news story came out that Cain Velasquez is being released by WWE. And really, I mean, this was a big deal because his signing was a very big deal to WWE. However, prior to that, Cain Velasquez was wrestling in AAA, wrestled in several shows there. So now that Cain has been released by WWE, one is, I mean, we can kind of discuss, was it a good move for WWE to release Cain Velasquez? They made such a big stir about signing him. He did have a high-profile match with Brock Lesnar, quote-unquote high-profile, however you want to define that. But also a really a big storyline with Rey Mysterio. So I'm just interested in your thoughts. Dusty, do you mind kind of sharing any thoughts you have about Cain Velasquez being released from WWE?
Well, I guess it was a smart money move because they just weren't doing anything with him lately. I feel like that we kind of had a situation where they brought him in to, have him lose to Lesnar, but maybe that's not the case. But I think that was kind of it. And so if they didn't have any plans for him, I think probably it was best to cut him loose. I wish they had done that earlier and saved some of the lesser guys. Although I've heard that only a couple of people that were released didn't ask for the release. So it could be a situation where he asked to leave. And especially since they weren't doing anything with him, I can see him wanting to get out there, keep his name out there, keep his face in front of cameras. No matter where it is, any publicity is better than no publicity, and he was just getting none right now in WWE.
Good point. Brennan, what are your thoughts on Cain's release?
I think it was a terrible move for the WWE. They have constantly demonstrated that they want to have a strong presence in the Latino community and have a notable name that will draw ratings from other populations than people that look like me. And Cain Velasquez brings legitimacy to their brand. He's an MMA champion who has a win over Brock Lesnar, who is a big WWE guy right now. He's got everything that brand likes. He's got size. He's got good looks. He's got speed. He's a total package for them. The only thing that they weren't doing with him was using him. So they wasted money to sign him and then send him away when they could have just put him in some good programs and worked with him.
Yeah, both are very valid perspectives. I mean, they probably spent a lot of money to sign him, so you would think they would want to use more bang for their buck. Also, there was some news that he was still recovering from a knee injury, a leg injury that he received prior, so it did limit his ability to perform. But also we've seen WWE utilize, more mainstream stars in just general storyline without them having to be physical. He just also happened to have someone who could do both. But now with Brock coming out of the picture a little bit too, it also makes sense that Cain may not be in the picture as well. But, possibly another misstep. We did talk earlier about some missteps WWE has had in incorporating luchadors into the SmackDown and Raw. Same thing happens with a lot of Latino stars. It's been a misstep, and for everything that they may be doing in a good direction, they also have a misstep. and this could be one of them. However, if it does free up some money to allow them to keep some other people on board for a while, it doesn't bother me as much because I'd rather be able to see that money go to good use and for someone who's seen more regularly or to put it for other projects than just paying Cain Velasquez to sit at home. I referenced Cain really got his start in Lucha Libre with AAA. I'm wanting to know both of your thoughts as well on will we see him back with AAA? Does this open the door now for him to return to Mexico?
I think so. I think that's probably his most likely. He can walk into AAA and be a main event star tomorrow. And so I think that's most likely his destination. He's got some history there. He apparently lost time there. And so I think that if we see him in pro wrestling, that's probably his most likely return is to AAA.
I definitely think that he has illustrated over and over again a strong passion for Lucha Libre. He very clearly wanted to do the AAA performance. He very clearly has, in his MMA career, shown a love for the sport of Lucha Libre. And we had talked previously with Pro Wrestling Revolution, and they had mentioned that he was going to do some training with them at some point. So I think that he might make a stop on his way back to Mexico and show up in the American Indies for a little bit.
Very good.
That would be awesome.
Yes.
I mean, I would be excited to see him at my local indie.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I definitely agree, Brandon, about Cain's respect for Lucha Libre, and also it's part of his culture. A fun fact, I mentioned it in regular conversation, but never on a podcast before, but Cain Velasquez and I grew up in the same town, Yuma, Arizona. And so it's a very small community, but it's also a fighting community. I mean, we've had a few MMA fighters come out of Yuma, Arizona. We're some tough people out of Yuma. But it's also very cultural, and I do think he has a good respect for it. And not only good, but just, it's part of how you grow up in the desert Southwest. And I know that was something in his youth of watching that. So to have an opportunity to continue to do that, if it's something that he's very interested in, and if he is fully retired from MMA, this is a great segue to continue to have a physical job while also doing something fun. So, but I love the idea of him possibly stopping at an indie or so, to have some programs and to get some reps in before going back to Mexico. But it also seems like Dusty said, he'd be welcomed back with open arms right away. So whatever stop he makes is, completely at his discretion, but also he has a lot of doors open to him now that he's left the WWE. We were joking around off air not too long ago about the most outrageous place we think we would see him. I joked that, hey, it's Bane Velasquez. What is he doing in the Impact Zone? I mean, I think it'd be cool. Look, a Moose Cain Velasquez program, shut up and take my money. It would, it would probably take I don't know if Moose would put him over. I would think he would because it's Cain, but it's also Moose, so I'm not sure. But, in a crazy world, is there any place that maybe we wouldn't expect to see him? And I know Brendan already kind of did that already with his prediction on the independent scene. That I think would be a place, kind of almost an outrageous place, because you don't think you'd go to a Pro Wrestling Revolution show and see Cain Velasquez, but hey, it could happen.
As everybody else has echoed, I would absolutely think it would be an amazing thing to see him show up at any indie show, Pro Wrestling Revolution, or if he were to come up here and do Lucha Libre Volcanica. But as far as crazy places to go, when we were floating this conversation, I thought, what if he were to show up in the British independent circuit with that? Yeah, right?
Shut up and still take my money. Like I think it's hard for me to not find a place that he wouldn't be interested in because of his background, both in MMA, but also with training in lucha libre. Like that's a pretty interesting combination.
I thought he could be great in Japan too. You know, they like a big American, and like he could go, and I mean, he could really. I mean, I think that could be some really interesting work between some of the matchups there. And I think especially if he could do some fun things like DDT, maybe we get to see him wrestle Godzilla or something while he's there. That would be awesome. I mean, who doesn't want to see somebody like Cain Velasquez wrestle Godzilla, right? Like, that would be amazing.
If the money's right.
Shut up and take my money.
Shut up and take my money. Yes. All of those were whatever. That is a shut up and take my money moment. Cain Velasquez versus Godzilla. I mean, it's 2020's already been a weird year. I believe it now. And also on a side note, Brennan, when we were talking about this, you also made a good point about someone that Cain worked with in WWE, Rey Mysterio, and his contract possibly coming up in the next few weeks, possibly expiring. Can you give some more insight into that?
So when I was looking, the earliest reported date that I could find would be that his contract might come up in October. Obviously, with the WWE being the way it is, if they're not planning on using him, that may happen sooner. But it would be very interesting to see what would happen if Rey Mysterio were to also be let back into the world. He's definitely a man that's near the end of his career in ring. He will always have a future in wrestling, and he will probably still be wrestling when he's old and retired in some place, but. As far as being the main eventer, he's probably looking at the next 5 to 10 years, which is still a long time, mind you. But in the life of a wrestler, that's an interesting time because you start thinking about your legacy. And he, as you mentioned, he was tied with Cain Velasquez, who was part of his family scenarios with Brock Lesnar, where his son was involved, and Cain was purportedly the godfather to this son. So it would be very interesting to see both of them on the independent circuit at the same time. They could do things, or I'm suspecting that Rey might do one more run with WWE and then call it good.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's waiting for a retirement match with Dominic. And so I think his last main run, well, not even a retirement match, but maybe like a battle for the mask or whatever, so that Dominic can wear the mask, even though we know his face. But something with Dominic. So I think if Dominic gets a spot in WWE, Rey Mysterio stays. Or if that's his aim to get him a spot in WWE, Rey Mysterio stays. But I think if he thinks it's unlikely, he'll go somewhere else to do those last few years to try to elevate his son to being a star.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. That Dominic is now of age where he's training and preparing possibly for a career in pro wrestling. So there may be decisions influenced by what he can do too to just help with Dominic and his training, or just to help segue him into the right opportunity, whether it's the right promotion or company. So that could be staying with WWE as a way to help build a career and a way to bring in Dominic as the next generation, or it could be almost anywhere else as well. I do think other promotions would be fairly happy to also be that platform to tell that story, if that's the direction they want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen Ray leave and come back, but both of you made really valid points about, where he has added his career and, it possibly coming to the end, what makes the most sense for him, whether it's, financially, whether it's for opportunity, whether it's, even contention. I mean, right now he is featured in this year's Money in the Bank briefcase match, which, the crazy premise that it's going to be held at WWE headquarters simultaneously, both the women's and the men's matches. Everyone starts at the ground up to get to the roof. A really interesting way of doing Money in the Bank, but it's fairly high profile for Ray, and we haven't really seen that in the past few months since his storyline with Kane. Is this something we see as a high of Ray going into more high profile things in the next few months, or do we see that kind of declining?
So from what I have seen of the way backroom politics work in the WWE, if you are starting to get more high-profile matches the closer you are to your contract expiring, that's the WWE expressing interest in continuing your brand with them. So
exactly.
I feel like they are making a strong pitch to keep Rey Mysterio signed with them and continuing to perform or work backstage or whatever it is that he decides he needs to do.
Well, that's the other thing. Backstage, if they decide to open their own competing performance center for Lucha Libre or train Lucha Libre at their Florida center, having Rey Mysterio as a trainer would be, inexplicably huge.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, whoever
That's the point.
Whoever gets him as a trainer has an automatic edge in gaining all of that talent's attention that want to be the next generation Lucha Libre stars, because there is only one Rey Mysterio Jr.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you're right, now it's not just beyond, someone who will work in a physical capacity as a wrestler. It's now backstage roles. It's now trainer roles. So there's many more pathways available now for luchadors once they decide to maybe take a step back from the ring, and larger companies like WWE are ready to capitalize on that as well. So that's such a good point about what the future can hold, because it may not be in the ring, it may be, or any promotion for that matter, may be in more of a training role.
Absolutely, and that brings me to a quick aside that I wanted to bring up. You mentioned that Dominic is old enough to train now. I would like to point out that many luchadors start actually wrestling matches as early as 16, which implies they're training much earlier than that, and is a big part of that culture. I used to joke with a friend of mine about doing a shoulder roll as you are born. He's definitely got a lot going on there, where he's probably been trained for a very long time already. So we don't know just how good he could be already.
Very, very true. We've only seen just the glimpses of him on TV, on WWE programming. So you're right. There's a lot that we haven't even seen from Dominic that, is just even very intriguing in its own topic to see, this legacy that could continue. And just like with multi-generational stars, what that means for their career and how they stay on that line with their family history, and how sometimes they move in a different direction. So I will be very excited to see Dominic's career and where he lands as a person, as a performer, because I think there's a lot of potential for him in the future.
All right. Are you back with us, Dusty?
Did we
All right.
Oh, hold on. All right, we got him back in. Hold on.
Okay,
We're
perfect.
phoning in Dusty. All right.
Yeah. Special guest, Dusty.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I know we just brought you back in, Dusty, but we've made it to the end of this week's show.
Dusty made it all the way.
He made it all the way to the end of this week's show. So thank you so much for listening. Don't forget, you can follow Lucha Central online at luchacentral.com. There you can find just it's an amazing resource of Lucha Libre information. Of course, there's daily news there. Also, an amazing daily segment called This Day in Lucha Libre History. Today's story does reference what Dusty had talked about earlier today with the founding of AAA. That's featured in to this day in Lucha Libre history. That's updated every day, so you can find lots of new interesting facts and tidbits on a daily basis. You can also find information on everything that's happening with all of the tournaments that we talked about, including Lucha Central's own tournament, Lucha Madness 2020. This is a fan-voted tournament, and right now we're in the Final Four, the 5th round of the Lucha Madness tournament. Voting will remain open until Sunday, so you still have time, hopefully as you're listening to this. It's not Sunday yet, but you can go and vote on the Final Four, and then I believe we'll have the finals shortly after. But according to LuchaCentral.com, the polls will remain open until Sunday. So if you are just tired of watching tournaments and want to participate in one, you can go to the Lucha Madness tournament on LuchaCentral.com. Also, you can find Lucha Central through social media. You can find them on Facebook and Instagram at Lucha Central. And you can find them on Twitter at LuchaCentral.com. Don't forget the com on Twitter, LuchaCentral.com. There's also a lot of great videos on YouTube, on Lucha Central YouTube. You can find interviews, snippets, matches of luchadors, wrestlers on the YouTube page. I recall seeing a quick snippet from someone who just debuted on NXT this week, Karrion Kross, formerly Kevin Kross. There's a video of him on the Lucha Central YouTube page. So check it out. There's so much content available that you don't want to miss out on any of it. Again, Lucha Central, your source for all that's happening with Lucha Libre. And again, if you want to know what's happening, you can also check out this podcast. Our goal is to do this every single week. So thank you so much for listening. For myself, Miranda Morales, Dusty, Brendan, thank you, and we will talk with you next week.